Sandeep almost took my line. If you're wondering what the relationship is between flying and HR, well, they're about as dangerous as each other. And probably moving at about the same speed as well, I suspect. So as you'll see, I was going for the prize of the longest title for the conference of any presentation so far. So having won that, I'd like to offer a few words about what is now my business and also my passion, which is delivering quality online education to thousands of students around the world. And I believe very strongly that, having been in HR, this is a really viable solution now for all of those challenges that you're faced with that we've heard from our two distinguished speakers so far about talent retention and talent development. Sandeep has already given me a brief introduction. I do feel very much at home here. My business now has, my title has innovation in there. It's about developing new programs, but I have spent most of my career working in HR. I teach HR, and I research HR. So without having conferred with the two previous distinguished speakers, I'm going to share with you some of the trends that I've seen happening and researched around the world, and I think you'll see some very similar patterns to the ones that you've already heard about. So I think as HR executives, if you're the same as the ones that I've experienced around the world, one of the things that we're seeing, I think, is a soaring global demand for training and continuous education. It really is phenomenal. Mr. Rao talked about automation, globalization, automation. It's shrinking the number of jobs that we're seeing that demand little or no education, and growing the number of jobs available that really require that level of education. Here's a statistic from the US. And the US often leads the trends around the world. Almost a trebling of people in the age category of 35 plus over the course of 10 years who are looking for higher education. It's one example of this growing global demand for education. Something that I know this audience will all be only too aware of, that 40% of the world's graduates in 2020 will be from India and China. There are now already more honors graduates in India than there are children in the United States. So this growth in demand for education, I think, is unevenly distributed, of course, towards those countries that we're seeing where there is this growing developing middle class. And this is very much fueling the demand, I think. And the third element of this growing demand is an increasing internationalization in the intentions of those looking for degrees. So in 5 years, 19% in 2007 to 30% in 2012, students who would consider going abroad for their education or for their qualifications. This is another trend that we're seeing, people looking beyond their own horizons. And we've already heard from our two previous speakers about students these days who are developing their own value set. They're very much connected. They're very much developing the value set of other people, like-minded people, around the world, not necessarily just from their own country or their own background. And I think this is one of the phenomena that is fueling this demand. So a growing demand for education. If we look at the supply side, universities are having to respond to this growing demand. You are essentially their clients. They are having to supply you with the talent that you require in the format that you require it. So what's happening? I think we're passing to a third generation of university. Now, of course, not every university has reached this stage yet, but I think many of you will recognize the neo-traditional or industrial educational model, where universities were set up to produce large numbers of people who could supply factories, supply companies with a scalable workforce, a high volume, almost a manufacturing model of education. Well, what universities are now having to do is to respond to the need for individuals to receive an individualized education that responds to their needs. Mr. Nathan talked about, and I really like the concept, the idea of of the employee sacking you? Well, it's the same thing. Students are now demanding their own education, the one that suits them. So there's the concept of mass customization, which comes, of course, from manufacturing, where you can have a mass-produced product which is tailored for your individual needs. And that is where universities are now moving. So that's the supply side. This is how universities, I think, are responding to this challenge. Now, the third trend, I am not going to spend much time on it because I think it's already been very well covered by our two previous guests. Clearly, the trend is education. And Mr. Nathan, I really hadn't collaborated when I chose 3 key words, which you used almost exactly the same words: mobile, social, digital native.